And hello and welcome back. We're going to try out something new today. We're going to be doing a tier list where we will be ranking each and every single TEC unit in the game. So that's a really cool idea. I've been thinking about doing something like this for quite a while, but it just never happened. But right now, I really felt like it, and I think this is going to be very cool indeed. Yeah, you can see I've divided up some tiers here. We have the OP tier at the top. We have the Avoid tier at the bottom. And then we have a couple of nice little tiers here in between. We have the Situational tier, the Solid tier, and the Great tier. That's leading up to the OP tier. So, and I should just, something just for this tier list. I mean, I should just say perhaps that, as I think of this tier list, unless I put something in the Avoid tier down here, I wouldn't say that, so if I put something in Situational, for example, I wouldn't think of that as the ship being, or the unit being necessarily a bad unit. It just means, it would just mean that the usage of the unit or the ship is a little bit more limited, as I see it. It might not be a bad ship per se, but its usage might be a little bit more niched, and you might want to think twice about building these types of units just as a default option, and kind of preserving them for a more the situations where they are actually useful. And in general, my thinking here is that I'm gonna just rate the ships basically based on how practical they are in game. So for a real game and for a real in-game situation, how general practical are they going to be? And this is of course based on my experience. So, but without further ado, let's start with our first ship. So we have first, of course, the regular scout, the Prova Scout Corvette. Nothing really to say here. It's a scout. It does scout stuff. There's basically no difference between this and any other scout in the game, except for, of course, the Vasari scout, because the Vasari scouts host a little bit of weapons on their ship. But in general, it does scout stuff. It's a very solid thing indeed, and one thing I would say about the scout is some people kind of stop getting scouts or during the mid to late game, or they don't even get scouts in the early game. But I can tell you, scouts are very important, and they give a lot of vision, and they're quite cheap, especially in the mid to late game. And in the early game, you can place scouts and tell them to just sit around at a planet and scout out important choke points and so on, which is very, very good for scouts. But for the late game as well, if you build, let's say that you want some vision and you just decide to just spend, I guess, I don't know, you build 10 scouts, and 10 scouts, that's about, what would it be? 10 scouts would be 2,000, I think. Yeah, 2,000 credits if you build 10 scouts, and it's just going to be a massive vision game in your favor there. And you can just tell them to go out to explore, and you're going to see the entire map. So very solid ship. Not great, it's just a scout. Next up, we got the Shrien Gunship Corvette. Now this one, most people don't really like the Shrien Corvettes. They would probably put them in the Avoid tier here, I would suspect. I'm actually not going to do that. I'm going to put it in the Situational tier. Now, that being said, I think that Shriekens are very situational. They have a quite particular use, I think, which is if you are trying to go very aggressive early on, and you just want to kind of, you're in an aggressive position where you're positioned right next to your opponent, and you want to kind of take the fight to your opponent right away. You go in with your cap ship. Shriekens can actually be quite good, especially with the Sova Carrier. where you can, start building Shriekens directly on the battlefield. It can give you that little bit of extra supply that you can need to sort of win that important early fight and sort of get one planet advantage over your opponent. So, I mean, if you win an early fight, you can deny one planet for your opponent, and then you get one planet for yourself. And Shriekens can really help you do that, and they're also very, very good against the early, regular light frigates of all the factions. So very, very, solid in an aggressive early situation, but falls off quite hard later in the game. Can't really break structures, can't really fight capital ships, quite fragile, vulnerable to AoE. So be careful about getting too many of these, but in the early game for early fights, very, very solid indeed. Now, next up we have the Cobalt Light Frigate, the standard frigate that you start with early in the game. And I mean, this is kind of the the vanilla workhorse ship of the TEC. I'm going to place it in the solid tier. I've actually got a new appreciation for the Cobalt Light Frigate lately. I mean, they're what can you say about these? I mean, they don't scale particularly well in one sense, because once you get through to the mid game point, they're actually quite vulnerable against a lot of ships, and they don't deal too much damage to capital ships. So I mean, once your opponent starts getting a lot of capital ships, or they have like 3 or 4, Cobalts can actually have some trouble fighting them. But that being said, it is possible, if you're going for a strong aggressive opener, to kind of spam a lot of Cobalt Light Frigates. And I mean, if you get these guys in sufficiently high numbers, then they're actually a serious problem. I mean, even for capital ships. And of course, you don't have to research them. They're available right from the start. You can get a lot of them. They're not too fragile once you have them in large numbers, at least for the early game. And I mean, even AoE damage is quite good against them, but still, they can take quite a bit of a punch, at least when you are have upgraded some defensive stuff on your in your research tree. So that's cool. It's like the basic vanilla ship. Nothing more to say. It's a solid choice for the early game. Definitely pick it up. Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's my phone. Let's go. Now we have the Colony Frigate. I would also put it in. I mean, to put this in solid. I mean, there's not much to say about this. I'm gonna put it in situational because I mean, it's not. You don't get Colony Frigates every game. If you have a colony, if you start like with a colony capital ship like the Akkan, you're not going to need the colony frigate. Of course, if you start anything else with Akkan, it's mandatory to get at least one colony frigate. But usually with the influence being in the game, and you have with the colony seed nanites available in the influence tree from the minor factions, you usually don't get more than just one colony frigate for the early game. Unless there's some very particular thing. Of course, there's not always that the minor faction. I don't quite remember what it's called, but it's not always, at least, that the minor faction is available. The one that has the colony seed nanites, of course. So in that case, you're going to have to get more than one colony frigate. But other than that, it's you usually don't get more than one. So I'm going to put them in situational. Depends on what capital ship you start with. Of course, mandatory if you're going anything other than a colony capital ship. All right, I'm just going to have a sip of coffee here. 1 second. Very nice, very nice. Okay, what do we have next? We have the Kusov Siege Frigate, and this one is very interesting. This is... I'm wondering where to put this. It's at least in solid tier, I feel like. Can can I justify putting this in great? I'm not sure. I mean, the reason I think this is better than a situational tier is because Kusovs usually find some use. You usually don't get them early on in the game, but very, very strong usually to get towards the middle stages of the game. And I mean, the thing about this is it's kind of like a win more ship. Like, of course, you don't usually get Kusov siege frigates unless you're already winning the game. So if you're already winning the game and you want to win faster, of course, the Kusov siege frigate is a solid choice. And you might think, well, if you're already winning, what's so good about the Kusov siege frigate? I mean, what's the point of? I mean, if you're already winning, then like, what's so great about winning faster? Well, I mean, that's fine if you're playing a 1 versus 1. I mean, if you're playing a 1 versus 1, of course, if you're already winning and you're already killing your opponent, then the Kusov might not be too useful. It's just gonna help you win faster. But consider also that in game, you're usually, I mean, as Sins of a Solar Empire is played right now, it's not always played 1 versus 1. It's usually at least a 2 versus 2, or perhaps even 5 versus 5, or even more. And there are many situations where the Kusov is very, very powerful in these large-scale map situations. They're good for harassment. And also, if you're winning, let's say in the situation where you're winning on your side, but the opponent is winning on the other side, well, then a lot of the outcome of the game is going to depend on who is winning faster. And in that case, the Kusov is very, very important because it's going to help you bomb a lot of planets faster. It's going to help you clean up those annoying side planets, those asteroids that are out on the side. And you're just going to get all of those planets right away, and you're going to clean house and hopefully beat your opponent faster than your opponents beat the opponent on the other side. And in that way, you're going to win the game, usually. So Kusov, very solid choice. I think I'm going to put it here somewhere, maybe. So I'm placing it right now, at least in between the Cobalt and the Scout Corvette. We'll see if I change this around as the time goes by, but for now, let's put it there. Next up, the Garda Flak frigate. Now, the Garda, I think, is quite good in certain situations, so we're going to put it here in situational. I do think they have a little bit more use than the Shrien. They're useful in slightly more situations than the Shrien, so I'm going to put it above the Shrien here at least. The Garda, it has a lot of PD autocannons, of course, so they're quite good against missiles. So basically, there's a couple of uses for the Garda that might come up. So first of all, I should preface by saying they're basically only useful in the early stages of the game, which is not nothing, of course. It's very, very early game is very, very important. And they're useful in situations where the opponent has either a lot of missiles or they're spamming Corvettes, right? So if you're facing a Vasari player and they have a bunch of Conrax, they're shooting down against your cap ships. Let's say maybe if you, then Gardas are quite useful to have at least some of them if you can spare the money to get them. If you're facing Conrax against TEC, you generally want to get Flak Burst item on your capital ships as well. But Gardas are not too shabby in those situations for sure. You don't want to get too many of them though, because they don't really have any particular use aside from being a defensive supporting unit in that case. You definitely want some other ships to be able to dish out some damage then as well. And they can also be quite useful against Corvettes. So if you're facing like Corvette spam of like Vasari, for instance, so a Vasari who's building what's it called? Not the Raiders, but the yeah, I can't remember what they're called now for some reason, but of course the Vasari corvettes, you know which ones I mean. If you're facing those, and you're facing a ton of those, then of course the Garda can be quite nice. You can go military 2 and you can get the Garda upgrade in military 2. And using the Garda upgrade in military 2, you get the Garda gets a small little autocannon, which is very good against corvettes. So can really help against corvettes. If you have a sufficient amount of them, they just demolish them. So very strong in that situation. But other than that, they don't find much use, and especially not later in the game. So situational for sure. Next up, we have the Kalev Goss frigate. Now this one, I also want to put in situational because, and probably, I'm not sure where to put it. If I'm going to put it, I probably have to put it above the Garda as well. I think that's reasonable to put it above the Garda. But basically, the Kalev, as I see it, also has basically 2 uses. The first use is if you're facing an enemy who is pumping out a lot of capital ships. So if you're facing a Vasari player, for instance, who's building mostly capital ships and nothing else, or if you're facing like a capital ship spam of an Advent player, for instance, some Advent players generally don't get any supporting fleet. Well, I mean, basically any faction can resort to a capital ship spam if they are feeling like it in some way, shape, or form at least. And in that case, Caleb's can be quite good. I mean, because they I mean, you do need to have a sufficient amount of them, of course, but like once you get them up to like the 20 Kalev mark or something like that, you have like 20 of them, or perhaps even 30, then they're going to absolutely demolish capital ships, and they're definitely not safe at all. So very, very powerful in those situations. It also has one other very important use, which is it can help you to break defensive structures in the early game. So if you're like winning, for instance, if you're on the side and you're winning, and your opponent starts building a bunch of turrets, then I mean, if you have only Cobalts, it can be very, very difficult to break such a position. But the Calebs actually can, because they have 600 Pierce on their cannons, the Goss cannons. And the 600 Pierce, that's exactly enough to beat the because the standard durability of buildings is exactly 600. So the Ghost turrets are going to pierce the buildings, no problem. It's going to deal the full amount of damage to them, which is very, very good. One thing you can do is, I mean, say you're facing an opponent who has a bunch of Ghost turrets or beam platforms or whatever that's very strong against capital ships. One thing you can do is you amass. I had a game like this actually a couple of games back, but what you can do is you amass like 30 Calebs or something. So if it's a stalemate and the opponent just has a bunch of defense, you sit back, you build up like 30 Calebs, and then you send in the Calebs. You let the Calebs just massacre all of the buildings, and then or all of the turrets, and then you send in your capital ships afterwards, so that the turrets don't have an opportunity to focus the capital ships. So you send in the Calebs, you let the Calebs take down all or at least most of the turrets, and then you send in the capital ships right after, once the turrets are no longer a threat. And then the capital ships can just come in and wreak havoc on the opponent position, especially if you're winning. So very strong in that case. They're quite vulnerable though. I mean, they have 150 durability, which so they're very weak against like just the starting light frigates of each faction. So if you're facing an opponent who builds disciples or cobalts or skirmishers or anything like that, those are just going to get demolished. The Kalas are just going to get demolished by those. So I think definitely that the Caleb is a situational pick for that reason. All right, and now next up we have the Peron Carrier. Now this one, I'm sorry to the Peron, but this one is actually the first one I'm going to place down here in the avoid tier. Now, I'm sorry, Peron, but I generally I can honestly say I can't. I basically never build these, and I once I was thinking about making this video, I basically thought that I mean I couldn't think of a single situation where I thought that this was the correct thing to get. Now I might be wrong here. If any of you know any like cool use of the Peron that could justify putting it in situational, then please let me know. But I couldn't even find a situational use for these, and so that's why I'm going to put them in avoid. Now the biggest problem with the Peron isn't so much the ship itself, but it's the cost, I think, because the Peron is super expensive. Like it's very heavy on crystal. It costs a ton of credits. I think it costs almost like 200 crystal and 800 credits, which is, I mean, this is just a massive investment. And I mean, what do you get in return? I mean, you get like 2 squadrons of strikecraft. So you get either 2 squadrons of fighters, 2 squadrons of bombers, or 1 of each. And I mean, that by itself is just it's just not enough for the cost. It can't justify the cost in my personal opinion. I mean, they have, like, in theory, they should have the potential to gain a lot of value over time, because that's the kind of the point of strikecraft, right? That they're going to get a lot of value over time, and they're mobile, so they can kind of jump in between planets. But I mean, in general, the strikecraft don't really deal too much damage. They're kind of relying on that, attrition game to gain a lot of value over time. And yeah, I mean, just to compare, I mean, if you really want strikecraft, I would instead probably in every situation get hangar defenses, because hangar defenses, the defensive structure, you get an equal amount of strikecraft for basically half the price, almost. With the only downside being that the hangar defenses are stationary. So the hangar defenses are stationary. They can't, of course, move in between planets, but they're much cheaper than the Peron, and they're also more durable as well. I think they have, the hangar defenses have like 600 durability, and the Peron, that's another problem with the Peron. The Peron has, I think, 150 durability, so 150. And that is very vulnerable, again, to like just the standard frigates of all of the factions, because the standard frigates of all of the factions have 150 pierce. So they perfectly pierce the Percherons. The Peron, if the Peron had a little bit more durability, I would perhaps consider it. But right now, it's just dies way too quickly, and it doesn't deal enough damage, and it has a little bit too high of a cost. Yeah, so sorry, Peron, but you're going in the avoid tier for now. Now, here we go. From the worst to the best, we have the Hosik Robotics Cruiser, and this one, I mean, this is just an excellent ship. Like the support ship of the TEC is absolutely incredible. I mean, you get like 10 to 20 of these together with a cap ship or an otherwise well-compositioned army. It just makes your army so much tankier. It makes you so strong in the attrition game. In like the long game where you're fighting like with a bunch of capital ships, you're trying to you have a bunch of tanky ships, that people want to focus down. You have Hosikos there. They heal your ships up right on the battlefield. You send your capital ships away. You let them be healed up. They come back. They get like 30 health per second from the Hosikos. You can also upgrade them to restore antimatter to your capital ships. So your capital ships are going to be able to use their abilities a lot more often. It's just an incredible ship. An absolute must-have in any mid-game fleet composition for the TEC. Absolute must-have. Really, really strong. I'm putting it in OP. I wouldn't necessarily say that Hoshikos are OP per se, but definitely up there. Very, very strong ship indeed. And a very much a staple in the TEC fleet. Okay, and now we're come to the Javis long-range missile frigate. Now, where do I want to put this? Is it? I mean, I generally don't get the Javis too often. So I don't have the most experience with it. I'm not sure where to put it. I think it's not a bad ship. It's quite solid, I think. But yeah, it's good basically against capital ship heavy fleets. Yeah, where do I put this? I mean, just because I don't get it too much personally, let's just put it here in solid. I don't have too much experience with this. I usually rather get other ships. I like the Harcus more, which are coming up next. But if you're a Javis enjoyer, I mean, don't be afraid to get these. I think they're very, very solid, especially since people generally tend to get a lot of capital ships. I think the Javis is fantastic because the missiles are very strong against capital ships indeed. So very, very good. Very, very good ship. Oh, sorry, and we are back. So I just had, because there was a pop-up, so I had to go back and reset here. But okay, in any case, we have the Harka Heavy Cruiser next. Now, I would put the Harka in solid as well. We're getting a bunch of ships here in solid tier, but I think it's just a very solid choice. It's like the Cobalt Light Frigate 2.0. It's a very, very good all-round ship. I mean, it's the value for the Harka is of course higher than the Cobalt because it's a higher tier ship, but and it has the moving cannons. So, but for the mid game, I think Harka is a very solid choice if you want to get if you want to complement your fleet with just a very, very, very all-around strong ship. So definitely get the Harkas. I mean, I would say the reason I don't put Harkas in great up here is because I think that the build time of them is a bit long. I mean, the Harka is a reasonable price. It has a lot of value. It's very tanky. It's great synergy with the Hoshiko Robotics cruiser, and but they take quite a while to build. I think that's the biggest weakness. I mean, you have it even with like 2 or 3 factories, they take quite a while to build up, and they're not too cheap either. So that's why I can't justify putting them in great, but a very solid choice overall if you want to complement your mid to late game fleet, for sure. Here we have the Ogrov, also solid choice, I think. The problem, I mean, the only weakness. So the thing about the Ogrov, of course, comes first in tier 4, which is quite late. Usually, by the time you want to start getting the Ogrovs, you already have the Titan, right? But that's also what's nice about the Ogrovs. The Ogrovs have exactly 1,000 peers on their missiles, and that's actually the perfect counter to Titans, because Titans have exactly 1,000 durability. So the Ogrovs in large numbers can actually kill the Titans very, very fast. If you have like a sufficient amount of Ogrovs, the opponent's Titan needs to be very, very careful about getting in range of them. I mean, the weakness of these guys is probably that they're a bit slow. I mean, they're quite slow moving. So, I mean, if your opponent sees that you have a ton of Ogrovs, they might just run away with their Titan. So it can be quite difficult sometimes to get a direct confrontation against a Titan with these guys. But I mean, sometimes the threat is enough as well, I think, which is good. I mean, if you can get the Titan to run away and have a lot of pressure on the map, I think that's very good as well. Another thing I would say is that sometimes, I mean, once you get to tier 4 military, the Ogrovs, they're a solid option, but there's also usually a bunch of other stuff that you want to get when you're in tier 4 military. I mean, you usually want to upgrade your ships and stuff like that, and get just pumping supply and perhaps also get a bunch of more capital ships together with your exotic refineries. So the Ogrov sometimes finds some use in the later stages of the game, and sometimes not. Sometimes you just resort to building a bunch of capital ships instead. And speaking of capital ships, now we finally reached... I haven't put anything in the great tier here yet. I'm not sure if I want to do that now. Maybe I should. Maybe I'm gonna put the Harca in great, because I think that the Harca is quite... I mean, for the mid game, if you're facing it often against an opponent, getting a swarm of Harcas is definitely a win condition, right? So the Harcas, like getting a huge swarm of Harcas can just win you the game if you hit a good timing with them. So for that reason, and also to not to put too many things in the solid tier here, I'm going to put the Harcas in the great tier. I think they're a great ship. Actually, I think they're very, very good. I can just say something right before we're getting into the discussion about the capital ships and Titans here. I mean, there's two things about the supporting fleet in Sins of a Solar Empire. Right now, it's like if you want to get the supporting fleet in Sins of a Solar Empire, the main thing is like, because I mean, on paper, right? On paper, if you have the choice between getting a supporting fleet ship, like any one of these guys, and getting a capital ship, then the capital ship is of course going to be better, because the capital ship has much higher value. It gains levels. You can upgrade them with items. They scale a lot better. So capital ships are of course always going to be better generally than getting supporting fleet. But the idea, at least with the supporting fleet as it is right now, is that you can get a lot more of these ships faster, right? So, I mean, if you want to hit a particular timing, for instance, if you want to go for a timing push, or try to kill your opponent at a particular timing, then of course if you go for a bunch of these small ships, these supporting fleet ships, you're going to be able to amass a lot of supply a lot faster than your opponent. And if your opponent isn't ready for that, and you come in with a timing attack with these with the supporting fleet, then you can just kill your opponent outright, of course. And but it is of course like, if you go for supporting fleet, if you get a large supporting fleet, you really need to use the fact that you're getting a lot of ships faster than your opponent to try to punish them for. I mean, given that your opponent is trying to go for a cap ship rush or getting a bunch of capital ships, you really want to make use of your supporting fleet to kind of try to punish that and pressure them enough so that you deal damage, so that their capital ships don't get time to scale up. So that's kind of the idea with the supporting fleet. You need to hit timings. You need to go aggressive when you've built up enough supply, and kind of trade and make use of the ships you have. So with that said, let us go up to the capital ships here. Now, first up, we have the bread and butter of the TEC the TEC faction, which is the Kol Battleship. Now the Kol Battleship, I think is a very, very, to put it in the great tier. Great or solid? I'm not sure. Yeah, I think the Kol is great. I think it's not the best. It's not the greatest starting capital ship, and it does often require little bit of items to reach its full potential. Like so if you have a bunch of Kols, you definitely want to try and get the rapid auto reloader item on it, and preferably also the Goss slugs in the late game, because that's gonna the Kol has a bunch of Goss turrets, so and the rapid auto reloader is gonna help it to gain a bunch of damage. Also, you would like primarily to get the antimatter engine on it, because the beam, its main ability, the beam, it's actually quite poor in the early game. Like the beam eats up a lot of antimatter, so you can like only fire off basically 2 beams in the early game. So that's why you don't really want to get the beam early, but instead just get the reload ability of the Kol in the early game. But in the later stages of the game, where you can get the antimatter engine and actually have antimatter to continuously fire off the experimental beam ability, then the Kol just becomes a menace. So Kol, very, very strong, like decent early to mid game ship. Very, very strong in the later stages of the game when you start to get items on it. So that's what I would say about the Kol. It scales very well with items. Next up, we have the Akkan Battlecruiser. This is one of my personal favorites. Of course, I really like going for Akkan. Now, I've gotten, I think that the Akkan is absolutely fantastic. Its main drawback is, of course, that it doesn't really fight very well in the early game. So if you're like facing an opponent who's very aggressive, if you're in a flank position, and the map, and especially if the map layout is such that there's just like 4 or 5 jumps in between the players' homeworlds, then going for the Akkan Battlecruiser can actually be quite dangerous, because if your opponent just colonizes towards you, they're gonna reach you before you have like the chance to get a second capital ship, before you have the chance to get like a large supporting fleet even. And then you're just going to get run over if you play the Akkan. So like on random maps, it can be a bit risky to go the Akkan, because of course, random maps, you don't know the map layout. So given that the map layout is correct, or it's if you're lucky with the map layout, you can definitely get away with going for the Akkan, even in the flank position. But if you're unlucky with the map layout, you might just auto lose right away. So it's a bit dangerous for the flank position. But it's of course an absolute staple when playing in any situation pertaining to where you're not facing off against an opponent on either side. So I mean, if you're in any other position than the flank position, I think that the Akkan is an absolute staple. You really, really need it. It gives you, I mean, if you go for an early trade port with Akkan, I mean, I can guarantee you that you're going to be the first in economy every single game. So very, very good ship. I'm not sure where to put it. Where should I put this? This great tier is a little bit confusing to me. I'm not really sure what to put here. I'm not really sure what to put up in here, but I think that the Akkan is great. It has some weaknesses in the flank position, but absolutely fantastic ship. Sometimes you can get away with it in the flank position, but an absolutely fantastic ship in any other situation where you're not right next to your opponent. So, All right, and continuing with the capital ships, we have the Dunov Battlecruiser next. And I think the Dunov is very, very solid. Hmm. What do I want to do with this? Probably putting the Dunov in solid here. Yeah, probably putting the Dunov in solid because, I mean, the Dunov, very good supporting ship. That actually deals decent damage as well. Like it actually packs quite a bit of a punch with its missiles. So you definitely shouldn't underestimate the damage output of the Dunov either. And it has quite good supporting abilities, but it's not. Of course, you need a couple of capital ships that the Dunov can actually support. Like you can't just have a Dunov on its own. You need a bunch of capital ships with it so that it actually has targets to support. But very, very solid choice indeed once you have a couple of ships. So very, very solid indeed. I'm actually going to put down the cool to solid tier because, yeah, basically for capital ships, I think. I think basically for capital ships, I'm going to give them a little bit more points, I think, in my mind, if they're a good starting capital ship. And I don't think that Cool or the Dunov are great starting capital ships. I think that for the Cool, they're basically better options because its main damage dealing ability, which is its best ability, which is the beam. The beam usually requires a bunch of antimatter to fire off multiple times, which means that it's not the best early games battleship. I usually get the Cool early because the exotics for it is very convenient to get from your homeworld, the service from your homeworld. But the Cool is the Cool is a very good ship. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, the Cool is very strong even early game. It deals a lot of damage, but because it's not a good starting capital ship, it's not the best starting capital ship. I'm going to put it in solid. And with that said, you're probably going to guess where I'm putting the Sova here. Sova is a great starting capital ship. Very, very strong early. Doesn't scale as well as the other capital ships on the list here. But I would say that for aggressive start, Sova is absolutely fantastic. It has a lot of PD autocannons, can clear the most heavily guarded planets, no problem. Like shoots away all the missiles from the neutral militia. Has a bunch of strike craft in the form of bombers, and the missile battery deals a ton of damage to enemy capital ships. Even enemy capital ships that make use of missiles have a trouble dealing with the Sova because the Sova PD can just deny a bunch of damage from them. Really, really good starting capital ship. Of course, doesn't scale as well, so I wouldn't recommend getting more than one of them, like more than one in the early game. Or if you just have very convenient exotics for it, I might even get 2 Sova Carriers, but you don't want to get too many Sova Carriers, especially since they don't scale as well. But like, yeah. And the reason they don't scale well is basically because the strike craft is a lot more impactful in the early game. Like with the smaller fleets, the strike craft actually do more of a difference than when the large fleets show up. Because once you go get into the large fleets, the strike craft is usually going to get blown up somehow. It's going to get killed by something. A lot of ships have PD, or a lot of capital ships have PD, and yeah, the bombers are just not going to be as impactful, but they're very strong early game for sure. Next up, we have the Marza. I mean, speaking like people that I've played with, I have a lot of people who really, really like the Marza. I haven't played with it as much, but I do agree that the Marza is a very, very strong ship indeed, and especially because of its stun ability. I mean, so there there's several things about the Marza here that we could talk about, but basically for why it's a good early game ship is because it has just so much damage against enemy capital ships. Both the missiles and the Goss turrets allow it to be very, very strong early game, and it's also very tanky and also decent at clearing. I would say decent at least. It can require some help to like clear like super fast, but it has decent clear speed at least, and and it's very, very strong early game against other capital ships, which is usually a great advantage, because if you can push off the enemy capital ship in an early engagement, then you basically just win usually. So that's very good. And of course, another thing about the Marza is that it has, of course, its infamous ultimate ability, the missile barrage, which can just fleet wipe an entire fleet if you get it. Very, very powerful ultimate ability. Can really allow you to turn the tides of a fight. I mean, if the opponent has like a bunch of supporting fleets in the form of like small skirmishers or Cobalts or something like that, disciples, then the Marza is just going to one-shot an entire fleet, and you're going to turn any fight around, basically. So the Marza, very, very strong. Strong early game, falls off a little bit, then hits a huge mid-game power spike once it hits level 6. So very, very strong ship indeed. Also has access to the stun, like very, very powerful abilities. So I'm going to just say, I mean, the stun, while not too impressive by itself, it is the case that once you have a bunch of Marzas, so like once you get multiples of a Marza, then you can basically chain stun capital ships, and they're not going to be able to move whatsoever. Like, yeah, you're facing a capital ship, you're focusing it begins to run away. You wait until the ship has accelerated to full speed, and then boom, you stun it. And then you stun it and you hit it, and then you wait until it accelerates to full speed, and then boom, you stun it again, and it's still. And you keep doing that. You wait until it reaches the edge of the gravity well, and you use your third Marza, and you wait until it channels the phase jump out of the system, and you hit the stun, boom. And then the capital ship is dead, and there's basically nothing they can do. So the Marza can help you get a lot of kills on capital ships that you wouldn't otherwise get. I mean, at least given that you have multiples of them. So if you have like 2 or 3, very, 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 very dangerous for capital ships to be around them then. And also you shouldn't underestimate the race planet ability. I mean, the race planet, which is basically a planet bombing ability, you can run in with the Marza, and if the opponent hasn't upgraded defense points on their planets, the Marza can basically one-shot any low health planet using the race planet ability. So very, very powerful. Very, very powerful ship in the great tier for sure. Some of my friends would probably put it in the OP tier. I'm gonna put it right here at the top of the great tier. I'm not sure if I think it's OP. The Marza has some weaknesses dealing with, like it doesn't have any PD autocannons, so it actually can take quite a bit of damage from the neutral militia from the most heavily guarded planets. So if you're facing off against like a neutral planet where you have a bunch of long-range missile cruisers, the Marza can actually take quite a bit of damage from that. So it has some small troubles solo colonizing. Usually needs a little bit of a supporting fleet to help it colonize. Also, it's very slow. So if it's in danger, if a Marza is in danger, it can be quite easy to chase it down, I feel like, because basically every ship is faster than the Marza. So really need to be careful with the Marza to not get it into a vulnerable position. The enemy is going to be able to focus it down. So it's very slow, doesn't have any PD autocannons, but that's basically its weaknesses, right? So yeah, but still very, very powerful ship indeed. Next up, we have the Titans coming up, the big boys of the Sins of a Solar Empire universe, and we're going to take a look at both the Enclave and the Primacy Titan here. So, but first, I'm going to have a short break. And we are back for the final ships here. Of course, the Titans coming up, and next we have the Ankylon. Well, what can you say about the Ankylon? I mean, I would say that in general, both capital ships and Titans are quite powerful right now in the current state of the game. Basically because they're so tanky. They're very difficult to bring down as of right now. And because of that reason, the Ankylon, of course, being a defensive Titan, is especially difficult to bring down. So we're going to put it right up here in the OP tier. The Ankylon is just super, super strong. And I mean, the thing about the Ankylon is, I mean, being the Enclave Titan, it's supposed to be like the defensive Titan. And it really is. I mean, it has the Furious defense ability. It can regenerate a lot of armor and hull from its ability. And it's just so difficult to bring down because of that. So it can just deal out a lot of damage and take a lot of punishment. The opponent really doesn't want to focus it as well because of that reason. But even though it's a defensively strong Titan, it's not like, I mean, the Ankylon deals so much damage. Like, it's not a weak offensive Titan at all. Like the missiles from the Ankylon, once you get the items, of course, you need items on Titans for them to reach their full potential, of course. But if you have like the missiles, the beams, and then you complement it with like the rapid auto reloader, you have the missile guidance computer on it. I mean, you just completely destroy enemy capital ships and just fleets in general with it. And it's just so tanky. The enemy can't bring it down. It deals so much damage. It's just super strong. The only downside, of course, is the cost. It's a large investment to get a Titan always. But as of the state of the game right now, that investment is usually worth it. Titan here, the Ankylon Titan, is a very good Titan. Super difficult to bring down. One of the stronger Titans in the game, I would say. And what about the Primacy Titan? Now, the Primacy Titan, I would say, I mean, it's difficult to talk about the Primacy Titan without comparing it to the Ankylon, of course. So I would say, I mean, the thing about the Ragnarov, or sorry, it's the Ragnarov Titan here is the next one, of course. Now, the thing about the Ragnarov Titan is that I would say the Ragnarov Titan is a bit stronger in the mid game than the Ankylon Titan is, basically because the damage, I mean, the Ragnarov isn't nearly as durable as the Ankylon is, and but it deals quite significant more damage than it. Of course, that's the theme of it. But I would say that the damage is it is more useful in the mid game than the extra durability that you get from the Ankylon, because basically opponents' fleets aren't strong enough to bring down Titans anyways at that point. So usually the extra durability or the extra defensive power of the Ankylon isn't going to matter. The extra damage is good instead. And I mean, once you have the items on the Ragnarov Titan, the Ragnarov Titan can basically just sneeze at the capital ship and it's going to go down. So yeah, basically with the snipe ability and the heavy Goss slugs, you're going to just one-shot capital ships basically. They don't have a chance. So and that's a lot of that's very useful early game, or sorry, in the mid game. I would say, even more so than the Ankylon. Now, I would say that, I think the biggest drawback why I wouldn't put the Ragnarov up with the Ankylon is because I do think that the Ankylon is not too much worse than the Ragnarov in the mid game. And the Ankylon outscales the Ragnarov a bit, I think, because, as I said, the durability and the extra defensive power matters more later, I think, because the Titan is such an important unit that you really don't want it to go down. So the extra durability kind of really dissuades people from focusing the Ankylon, whereas people are going to be a little bit more excited to try to bring down the Ragnarov, and they actually have some more chance of doing that as well. So, and also the Ragnarov is a little bit more reliant on items, I would say. You really need the heavy Goss slugs on it, because the heavy Goss slugs are going to basically double the damage of it, and that's what's really going to allow you to kill the to get the maximum amount of damage with the Ragnarov. So and that's a ship item you have to research also. So whereas the Ankylon is usually fine. I mean, if you have an Ankylon with like the free items that you don't have to research, and then you have the rapid auto reloader, then the Ankylon is basically going to be fine mostly. But with the Ragnarov, you definitely you usually want to get the heavy Goss slugs, and that is a quite heavy investment in the research tree. So yeah, a little bit more of an investment item wise for the Ragnarov, but very great still for sure. Mostly because Titans in general are very strong right now, I think. And finally, I decided to include this, but we're also going to take a look at the pirates. So we have two versions of the pirates here. First, we have the Gang of Freebooters. Okay, so the Gang of Freebooters, honestly, super OP tier. I've been saying this from the start. I think that the Gang of Freebooters is absolutely busted. I saw this when I started playing the game like several months back, and I immediately thought that, oh man, like I don't understand what they were thinking with this. I mean, you pay like 750 credits and like a couple of metal and crystal, and you get 100 supply. It's and it's like high quality supply as well. I think it's nuts. That's my personal take, at least. I think it's nuts. I don't think it's fair. I think it's absolutely unfair. I mean, they did nerf it. To be fair, they did nerf it. So now you need an Andvar. You need a yellow exotic to get them. But honestly, I mean, I almost never feel that drawback. I mean, one yellow exotic, one Andvar. I usually get it randomly from somewhere. I mean, I usually have one Andvar to spare just from random, I don't know, a random derelict or just a random survey on some asteroid or something. So I basically never feel the drawback. If you want to rush them, if you want to get them like right away, then it can be a little bit more tricky to get an Andvar, but usually I think it's not still. I think that the downside doesn't justify the power of the research. I mean, if they raised it up to like 2 Andvar costs, if it cost 2 Andvar, maybe I could start like, because 2 Andvar is a little bit more tricky to get, I think. So maybe then I would like start, but even then, like even if it costs 2 Andvar, I would be like, this is ridiculous. It's like you get 100 supply just instantly for like no investment almost. But yeah, 2 Andvar, then maybe we start talking. 3 Andvar, then yeah, that might be a bit too much. But yeah, but yeah, very like I think it's nuts in any case. And finally, we have the pirate mercenary bases. The pirate mercenary bases, I mean, you basically get the same units as you get with a gang of freebooters, but I've decided to put them in a separate category because, I mean, it's just very, very different still because you pay the payment is so different. So I thought that justified putting the pirate mercenary bases in a separate category. I'm actually not sure where to put this. I mean, I don't think it's OP tier. I definitely don't think it's OP tier. I'm debating. Yeah, it's probably somewhere here in the great tier. Where should we put this? I'm gonna put it. I'm not really sure where exactly to put this in relationship to the other ships here, but let's just put it here, I guess. Something like this, perhaps. Yeah, the ordering, the particular ordering here, I'm not going to care too much about that. You can make your own judgment, but somewhere in the great tier at the very least. I mean, what's great about the pirate mercenary bases is that they're quite good. I mean, you can get a lot of supply very, very quickly with them. So that's the main thing. And the missiles from the pirates are actually very strong, very good against capital ships as well. You get a lot of siege frigates as well, like the pirate bombers, which can be very, very annoying. Synergizes also very well with the primacy research, which gives you credits for bombing planets. I'm not sure what it's called. It's not called Savage Thrill, because that's the Savage Thrill is the damage one. Yeah, but there's one research for tech primacy which gives you a bunch of credits for bombing planets. I'm not sure which one it is, but synergizes very well with that at the very least. And very, very strong mid-game option to build a strong fleet for tech primacy. I mean, yeah, the one weakness of the pirate mercenary bases, of course, is that, of course, you do get a lot of supply very quickly, but pirates are very squishy. Like the pirate ships are not too tanky, which means that they're going to get outscaled. Like if you just keep getting pirates through the mid game and you can't kill your opponent, then an opponent who's building like a serious fleet with like capital ships, like yeah, if you're thinking tech here, if you're like someone who's building Harcus, for instance, getting a bunch of Marzas, getting a bunch of Kols, Hoshikos, getting a bunch of Marza's Kol, Harcus, Titan, then the pirates are just going to be eaten alive after a while. So because they're not as durable as like the main just regular ships that you build. But you can get a lot of supply with them quickly, and that makes it a very, very strong mid-game option for sure. So, but that's basically it. I hope you enjoyed watching, and if there's anything you disagree with or any thoughts, anything you would like to ask or talk about, then please let me know, and that's enough for now. So see you in the next video.